She reported the incident to her parents. The police were called upon, and investigations began in earnest, leading to reports from many other children that Simpson had either fondled or molested them. He was subsequently charged to court with 10 counts of aggravated sexual assault of a child, 1 count of continuous sexual abuse of a child under 14, and 2 counts of indecency by fondling. He was initially placed under house arrest in 2017 before he was transferred to jail. However, he was deemed unfit to stand trial for 10 years and spent nearly a decade receiving treatment at state hospitals. Eventually, in 2010, he was asked to return to jail to stand trial and undergo further evaluations at Tarantino County Jail, but was killed by a 42-year-old inmate, David Faustino Flores, before he could stand trial or be convicted for his offenses. Flores was said to have hit him in the head several times. Simpson was pronounced dead at John Peter Smith Hospital. The cause of his death was linked to blunt force injuries to the head. Mitchell Harrison. 23-year-old Mitchell Harrison was serving a sentence at a prison in County Durham, UK, when he was disemboweled and had his throat slit by 2 fellow inmates, Nathan Mand and Michael Parr. Harrison was said to have begun to display sexually violent tendencies from a very young age, despite the fact that there were no known causes for these tendencies. His family was stable, but at 13 years old, he assaulted a 7-year-old girl and was given a formal warning by authorities. Yet at 15, he was charged to court for threatening to rape a 15-year-old classmate. By 2009, at 23, he was placed behind bars for raping a 13-year-old girl. He had met her on the street and lured her into his apartment with the pretense that she was about to get money to get alcohol from him. When they were both in the apartment, he made her strip naked and raped her twice until she managed to escape and run into the street naked, holding her clothing. On the 1st of October 2011, Mann and Parr had cooked up a sinister plan for Harrison. They invited him to a cell where they tied him up, slit his throat, stabbed his eyes, and slit his stomach open. They claimed that he had been bragging about how he sexually assaulted his 13-year-old victim and had decided to carry out their gory fantasies on him. Mann was already serving a life sentence for breaking into a nursing home and murdering 2 elderly women, while Parr was serving a life sentence for murdering a psychiatric patient. David Keever. David Keever was sentenced to prison in 1996 for child abuse offenses committed in 1994 and released in 2009 before he was rearrested in 2010. He had failed to register as a sex offender as mandated by law and thus was sentenced to 8 years and 9 months in prison. In July 2019, he was killed by another inmate with whom he shared a cell. 44-year-old Jimmy Ray Carruthers strangled him and stomped on his throat. He was found some hours later in his cell by a prison warden who was carrying out routine checks at midnight. Keever was found laying on the ground unresponsive and was confirmed dead a while later by the prison's medical unit. An autopsy was conducted which showed the cause of death as manual strangulation and traumatic injuries to the head and neck. His face, neck, and ribs were fatally bruised and broken in the attack. Carruthers was said to have simply stood by the door of the cell and was taken into solitary confinement by officers after the warden called for backup. This case was quite peculiar, as it was one in which both the victim and assailant were sex offenders. He had been in custody since 1994 when he was found guilty and sentenced for multiple counts of sexual battery on a minor and child abuse. Had he not committed the murder, he would have been released in February of 2021, but he was charged to court and given a life sentence for second-degree murder. Juan Villanueva. In October 2022, Villanueva was sentenced to life in prison for the aggravated sexual assault of a child under the age of 14, but he was found unresponsive in his cell on a Friday morning in February of 2023. He was attacked and killed by his cellmate, Ramon Escobar, who was also serving a life sentence at North Kern State Prison without the possibility of parole, after pleading guilty to 2 counts of first-degree murder in 2018. He had viciously killed 5 people, including his aunt and uncle, during a 1-month murder spree before the police apprehended him. Investigations revealed that he had killed his relatives before fleeing Texas and then began attacking people in Los Angeles and Santa Monica as a homeless man. Villanueva was discovered by prison officials carrying out routine checks. They immediately called an